I think one of the concerns we see in this day and age is the increase in what could potentially normalize the idea of lying signs and wonders in the skies, with the influx of the use of drones and other technology. And sometimes you do see these pseudo-religious counterfeits. And I know some of these things look like they're AI, but they are not. These have really been created using drones. And it was only a couple of weeks ago in Brazil, at their New Year's Eve celebration, where they had the Christ the Redeemer statue recreated with drones rising up out of the sea. And that caused some Christian discernment sites online to warn about how deceptive these lying signs and wonders could be when it creates a pseudo-religious counterfeit that draws people in and makes them in awe of this figure coming out of the sea, which, by the way, as they mention, there's a big difference between the true return of the biblical Christ and what rises out of the sea in the book of Revelation. So it's important for us to know the difference. And as we talked about before, the propaganda about extraterrestrial ascended beings, quote unquote, false saviors, advanced species and various things, that continues. I mean, you've even got this film coming out by Steven Spielberg in 2026 called Disclosure Day, which appears to be pushing the same thing.
We want to make Star Trek real. Okay? And we have spaceships going through space, big spaceships, and ultimately going beyond our star system to other star systems where we may meet aliens or discover long-dead alien civilizations. I don't know, but we want to go and we want to see what's happening.
And then we had all the news features about 3i Atlas, where experts were coming out on the news and saying, this is more than a comet. These are signs of aliens and various things. Popular figures in the New Age truth movement have done the same for a very long time, injecting trutherism with these ideas of interdimensional beings coming from a different realm, a different dimension, and essentially the same narrative, this theosophical pagan idea of the next stage above human and the return of these interdimensional beings to save the earth and all of those things. I mean, even if you scan back to the 1930s, you had propaganda like this. On the left there, this is the enemy, a sword going through a Bible. And then on the right hand side, of course, there was all the talk about the regime in Germany at that time being involved in some kind of development of advanced technology and how that kind of ties into the same thing. You see, a popular theme with this is the idea of mixing the esoteric with science, trying to make the occult scientific and kind of bringing those two things together for this Luciferian agenda. And so you see this false New Age Christ being promoted, being mixed with concepts like astrology and the New Age and Gnosticism and even Mithraism, Eastern philosophies. And you see this quote on here by Charles Fillmore, who was part of the New Thought movement. It says, Christ is the true spiritual higher self of every individual. This is complete New Age nonsense. Each of us has within him the Christ, just as Jesus had, and we must look within to recognize and realize our sonship, our divine origin and birth, even as he did. So, you know, they're pushing this false New Age Christ, which is basically part of the Gnostic concept that everyone has that light locked within them, that Sophia locked within humanity in the fight against the so-called demiurge. It's inverted, it's completely upside down, and it's a doctrine of demons. Jesus, of course, warned that in the last days there would come false Christs and false prophets. And the thing is, what is concerning, as the world is weighed down with the troubles and the wars and the conflict and the oppression that we see in our society today, we have to be aware of those who come with a false message of enlightenment and of peace and of freedom, because there will be counterfeits, ruses that will lead people to rebel against the very God who made them and sent his only Son to die for our sins, and to seek peace in something where there is no peace, to seek peace in the doctrines of demons of the Antichrist, a deception that will lead to certain death and hell. And we have to remember that none of this is above God. None of this is beyond God's control. God is still sovereign in this world. None of this has taken him by surprise. But we do know that because of these things listed in the Bible, the wrath of God will come upon this world. And some of these things may be judgments in themselves, that people are given over to false things because they refuse the truth of the gospel, which is the only way we can be saved from our sin. And I also noticed recently that the Backstreet Boys, I don't know if you remember them, they're doing a live tour and their show is called Into the Millennium. And this live show that they're doing has a lot to do with UFOs, UAPs, extraterrestrial imagery, where the band are kind of beamed down from a giant spaceship and they travel into other realms of space. And look, it kind of reminds me once again of this idea of training people or normalizing the idea of looking up and seeing these counterfeit signs and wonders. Of course, that's got a hint there, at least, of the idea of a counterfeit millennium, a counterfeit millennial reign, which we've also compared before, that there is the true 1,000-year reign of Christ that's talked about in the Bible, and then there's been many counterfeits of that in the past, even back to the 1930s, the idea of a 1,000-year Reich, where this dominant, dictating political figure was looking to create that 1,000-year Reich, and then he also incorporated some of these esoteric theosophical beliefs on top of that. And I'm not saying anyone that performs in these shows necessarily has any idea of what that propaganda is. Sometimes they do, maybe, sometimes they don't. Other times it's people behind the scenes, you just don't know. But that's not the point. We have a show called Into the Millennium, which again, we see that counterfeit idea put into the minds of the people watching these shows. And then they come onto the stage at first and they start singing this: "All you people, can't you see, how your love's affecting our reality? Every time we're down, you can make it right, and that makes you larger than life." So to me, there could be an undertone, at least there, of the idea of the law of attraction, the new thought movement, the power of thought, empowerment, and apparently the music video had transhumanist or transcendental themes. But yeah, you've got this whole thing here where you've got this appearance of these doctrine of demons put in there, that they're announcing when they come onto the stage the new thought or law of attraction ideas. Can't you see, all you people, how your love's affecting our reality? Every time we're down, you can make it right, and that makes you larger than life. And that's just very similar in terms of thematically with things that Gnostics say, Theosophists say, New Age teachers, Eckhart Tolle, David Icke and others. This new thought being injected and linked to the idea of extraterrestrial, like ascended masters, presenting humanity with these doctrines of demons. And that's just something I picked up on it. These videos aren't prophetic. I can't predict the future. All I know is that the Bible is true. We're not making authoritative statements here, but I just want to show you the kind of spiritual propaganda, we'd call it, that is being pushed on people during this time.